meeting, and as I say, we've got a lot of formal requirements tonight. And first of all, we have apologies and reasons for absence.
Borough Councillor Burgess can't make it.
He's got a committee meeting, I think, tonight. Declaration by members of any interest, pecuniary or other than, in accordance with the usual. I don't think I saw anything to spot there. Does anybody have any concerns?
No.
So I don't have any applications for dispensations to approve, and a reminder for everybody that the meeting is being recorded for publication. And we haven't got any members of the public here, so maybe they'll be listening to it afterwards. We don't need to adjourn to the public session because we haven't got any public. So we can carry straight on to confirming the minutes of the meeting of the 31st of March, which everybody should have had. Does anyone have questions about them? Any problems with them?
No.
Yvonne?
Can I just say that I have corrected the numbering that you had?
Yes.
Oh yes, on the planning application, yes.
No, not just that. The numbers, the minute numbers.
It's a must.
I missed out 33.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah, you're quite right. I didn't spot that. Naughty me. Oh, well, anyway, you've corrected that. And
Yes.
with that correction, is everybody happy?
Yes.
Good. Excellent. So we'll take them as read for signing at a later date. I'm going to have 3 signing pens when we get to it. Right. Matters arising. We've got the breach of the planning condition 1800468, which we talked about last time, the alleged use of the property as a holiday let. An update from Yvonne, please.
Unfortunately, apart from saying we should have had a response by the 20th of April, when we didn't, I chased the officer dealing with it, and I haven't had any response whatsoever.
Okay, so it's in abeyance, and you'll keep an eye on that. Okay. After that went out of the agenda, Yvonne pointed out to me that we'd already asked you for approval before, so we don't need to do anything on that. That's covered already. We then get to item 6, consider and agree any action in response to the consultation on Poplar Farmhouse application 01782 as opposed to 01728 as it says on the agenda. Now, councillors have had their attention drawn to the decision by KCC Highways to support this application, because I sent you out a long email of details and drawings. Their decision to support the application was subject to conditions that are not material to the problem that such a scheme would cause to the flow and safety of traffic on the 2082 if the scheme went ahead. In other words, they have got their usual things about having to have a cycle storage and an electric charging point, but not the rest, like what happens when lorries go in and out. So I put in that note to everyone, some points drawn from the papers in the public domain. It's a hope, at least, that Ashford might still refuse the scheme. It is overdue now. I don't know what and when they're going to do anything. It could be on the grounds of the listed building status, maybe. It could be on them knowing more about the highway situation in reality than the distant Kent officer does. Or it could be anything else. But in such a case, if they did refuse it, then one might reasonably expect that they would appeal. Of course, it's only for the access point at this stage. So the opportunity could still be taken, as far as I know, if councillors wish, for us to submit a follow-up note to the parish council. We did one before, of course, after our big public meeting and the long parish council meeting in February, was it? Drawing attention to the perceived shortcomings in the application and the basis of the decision by KCC and the knock-on impacts, really, very much what I've got in the email to you, but rewritten. That, I think, ought to be available to influence the ABC decision if they haven't already decided by then. I'm not sure when they stop reading these things. And otherwise, of course, it's on the file, as it were, for when the inspector gets to look at it, if it goes that way and goes to appeal. because an appeal, I presume, would be by submission of papers. I believe even the submission of papers is still supposed to come and look, which would be a step up from what we've had lately. But, that is something that councillors can think about, whether we want to put in anything else during attempt. I mean, it may be that these things have got responsive. We'll put it on there, no doubt the applicant will respond to it, given a chance. But it does look to me as though what Kent have been persuaded by is a bit tight, a bit skimpy. If you look at those turning circle things, they are, there is inches between them and the cars. But it's one thing to draw a swept area apart on a diagram. It's another thing for the poor sod driving the dust cart to actually have to miss the wingers, because he doesn't necessarily start. I mean, it's all very well on a computer. He doesn't necessarily start the swing in exactly the right point to manage it week in, week out for the next 5 years, or 10 years, or 15 years. It reminds me of, I don't know who saw it, the film about the airliner landing in the Potomac at Washington. The argument against the pilot was that he should have turned around and he could get back to the airport, and they simulated and he could get back to the airport. And then, if the film was true, I don't know, the acid test question to the person who was saying that in the witness box was, how many times did they run the simulation until they managed it? And they said 23. Oh, good, they can crash 22 times, but they get it right eventually. Well, I feel like that with the dust carts. So, what do councillors think?
I have a couple of thoughts. Thank you for sending us through all the information. I might not have fully understood it, so you can put me right. Number one, the dust cart piece, I couldn't see how that could work safely without double yellow lines being introduced in Wittersham, so that people didn't park opposite. Because if they parked it opposite, I cannot see a dust cart the size they currently use getting out of there safely. The other thing that struck me was, am I right in saying that the Kent Fire and Rescue have not said that they are comfortable with this turning to get their big ladder tenders in and out? Because frankly, KCC to say they think it's right without the fire and rescue experts looking at it is nonsensical. And I think we should go on record, Kent Fire and Rescue, and also, if they haven't been, the BIFA boss, to come out on a site visit, and maybe the Ashford person can come with them. But actually, I'd like to go and talk to a senior fire and rescue person, invite them along and say, it goes back to your example of, that we didn't get it right for the first 23 crashes, to say, are you really comfortable that if somebody's life is at stake on the top deck of a house that's built up there, that you can get a tender in, without having to negotiate around parked cars opposite, etc., etc. To me, it seems poorly thought out. The fact that they've done a swept entrance is absolutely fine for seeing things, providing nothing's in the way. But that's nothing to do with these big fire rigs that Kent Fire and Rescue are using these days. Are just not suitable. And the other thing is, I don't know is the dust cart allowed to turn around, or does it have to back all the way up, which happens in some small villages? No. So those are my thoughts, that we get the experts in for a site visit and get some clarity. If they all turn around and say, oh, this is not a problem, it's easy peasy and what have you, well, at least we can say we tried.
Okay. A few clarifications. The swept diagram, this one, that is based on having the cars parked there, and they tell you how wide the cars are. They're 2.0 metres wide that they allow, and then there's another diagram that gives you an extra few inches past the car. Now, but you're only talking inches when you've allowed for the offside window. The dust cart that they've used, and they show you it on the side here, I think that's probably bigger than the ordinary dust cart. I think it may well be bigger also than the ordinary fire vans, the one that sort of typically runs around. But I don't know things like turning circles and one. Well, I do, it's in the fire brigade letter. But the the fire figure that I use is for the turntable, or they don't call it that, the hydraulic platform nowadays, in our turntable. That is too big. What I don't know, though, for instance, is whether they would ever send that appliance to a house fire, or whether it would only go to a 4-story block of flats. I don't know. Kent, you're right, Paul, said they rely on, Kent Fire and Rescue said when I had the email correspondence with them at the beginning, they said that they rely on Kent County Council highways and the design guide and what have you. And I think where we probably come to is that these swept things are what they should do in principle, except that they don't allow for the hydraulic platform, but maybe the hydraulic platform, although it's in the KFRC letter, doesn't apply, I don't know. It shouldn't be quite as tight as they've made it, in my opinion. The tree looks as though, to me, they are cutting across it, and that tree is in Porter's garden, as far as I can see. It's on a boundary, but it's her boundary, not theirs. They go pretty damn close to the hedging places. You know, these lines are on there. So one way and another, and they've taken another slice out of the front garden of Poplar House Farm, which is, of course, a listed building. So one thing after another, I think that they are tossing the dice 6 times and hoping it comes up with sixes and saying, so there you are, it's fine. Okay, are people happy that I can pass it down to you, but I'll try and assemble a response so that how effective it will be, who knows, but at least we will be making the effort.
I think that's important that we make the effort, Jeremy.
Okay.
And just as side information, there was some building work going on in the wall outside yesterday for a short period of time.
Yeah, you see, that's another thing, that this, if it takes place, the garden of the house from the house side, the inside setting of the listed building, I think will be pretty damaged.
It will be.
But the street scene won't come out well either, because they're planning to knock down a lot of those trees if they get permission to move that garage across to the southeast corner. They're going to take a slice out the southwest corner for the lane. A whole slice of the brick wall will go.
Well, I think the wall will go down almost to the gate, halfway down the wall.
Oh yeah, and of course that's another thing. I don't see how those gates are going to be wide enough to drive a car in or out.
Okay.
And by the way, let's just say for argument's sake they're electrified. Every time a car comes along to drive in, and I'm not sure it will have the turning circle to get in, they're going to sit there for a couple of minutes or 90 seconds or whatever it is while the gate's open. You know, I see Janet Kids across the road from me. She has electric gates, and they don't sort of swing open in 5 seconds. Whereas if you're driving along the 2082 with 3 cars behind you, they don't expect to wait very long while you're waiting for the gates to open.
If we put a letter into ABC, wouldn't it be as well to send a copy to Kent Fire at the same time to express our concern, and also to Biffa? I know you had some discussions with Biffa.
No, I haven't done it with Biffa. I've done it with the ABC client side officer.
Wouldn't it be
again when I saw Kent had done it? I said, you know, are you happy? And he didn't reply this time. He's usually replied very promptly.
But wouldn't it be useful to send a copy to both those to show our concerns?
I'm not sure about Biffa. That could be regarded as slightly unfriendly by Ashford because it's their contractor. When I was a contractor to the equivalent of Ashford around the country, some of them were more jumpy than others, but they used to get pretty damn irritated if we were getting involved, except through them. I mean, in places we weren't allowed to have our phone number in the book and things like that. They may have settled down and been suing 25 years of having contractors. When I started it, they were often, you know, it was forced down their throats, but they didn't like it, and they used to keep us and the public apart as far as they could. Now, of course, we're a council, So I don't know on that one, Colin. It's
I was still going with it, and if, if you send it into ABC and they notice that we've copied in Biffa, then fine. It's all open and transparent.
Yeah, as well as KFRC. Okay. Well, I'll pass something around that I propose to do, and we can all look at that.
Jeremy, can I just on the back of that? Is Mike Hill aware of this?
Yes, he is. I could have mentioned that. I'm sorry. I could not.
Okay.
I was quickly.
And also, is he coming?
Yes, he is. I emailed him as soon as this happened. I got a reply to explain what the problem was, and asked if he'd look into it. He came back pretty quickly through his staff officer and said he'd be happy to make a visit once the election's over. Now, I don't know if it's a further matter or if it's just that he's too busy before the election. I'm sure he doesn't want to be appearing to break any rules the way everyone gets jumpy these days. I can't see it is in the way because it's ongoing business. But, it's not campaigning. But nevertheless, he said after the election he would have to come and I will see him then.
Does that mean the 7th of May, if successful?
Well, this is of course, he has to be re-elected for this to apply, which I assume he probably will be. And then, I don't know if it'll be as early as the 7th, it depends on the hangover, I expect. But apart from that, I hope soon. Because, of course, Kent has had difficulties in the past maintaining their majority, haven't they? But I think that problem went away a few...
And I don't think they have a problem on a majority ruling.
Yeah. I think it's gone away. Right, so that's the answer to your question. Yes, Mike Hill, I did involve Paul, and I'm grateful for these sort of suggestions of what I've got to do because it's easy to forget loose ends all over the place when these things are happening, especially in the... Okay, so we'll move on from that one. We'll do something and I'll pass a draft by you. It needs to be done soon. Now we move on to the core business that we needed to get done. We're doing it tonight because I thought adding it onto the annual meeting of the parish council next week would just make a really, really long, tedious meeting. And it gives us a little bit of a margin. If there's any issues that come out tonight that can't be fixed tonight, we've still got a chance to do them on next Thursday before we run out of the opportunity. And it's worth saying in that respect, I think Yvonne probably put it out, so I'm not sure, because I get a lot of things direct from Cal. The judgment of the court case last week, when the court case, remote meetings could carry on, the judges rejected it. I'm not really surprised that they rejected it. I've got the judgment, 28 or 29 pages. I haven't read it yet this afternoon. They have in fact left over a loose end, which is quite interesting because I'd already heard from Councillor Burgess that they have the same issue as we do with things like planning committee. Everyone can pile in, and because after May the 7th, they can't do it remotely, and they're only allowed to get a certain number of people in the committee room, or even if they go in the council chamber, only a limited number. So they had an aspiration that maybe they would do a remote meeting, a hybrid meeting where all the people who were directly involved would turn up in the council chamber, and it would be broadcast for the other members of the public who wanted to watch but were not taking part. Well, interestingly, and I only just caught this at the end of the judgment, the judges appear to me to have said that after they'd circulated their draft judgment, they were asked what about whether members of the public are counted as having attended even if they do it remotely, because that's part of the law. And the judges turned around and said, well, it wasn't argued during the case, we can't give a judgment on it, therefore, but if you want to come back afterwards and make your points, then we'll consider it. Now, Mick thought that was the way they might go, and at the minute, I sent an email this afternoon saying you better talk to your learned friend Kel and ask him what he thinks, because I reckon that's been ruled out until the judges look at it, at which point I suspect it will be ruled out again. I think it's, the government, I don't know if you heard, the government actually were the defendants in the case and backed the appeal, or back to the plane for judgment. So in other words, everyone appearing in front of the judges was on the same side, and they backed the other side. But that's how they go. Right, so that's why we're doing this tonight. On we go. As much as I do now. To review the effectiveness of the system of financial internal control and the internal RFO can lead on this, I think.
Right, well, as far as from what way I look at it, we have our monthly transaction statements produced each month, so everybody is aware of the transactions that are taking place. We have a quarterly budget statements are produced as well, so you can keep an eye on a quarterly basis as to how we're doing. And the internal audit is carried out once a year. From my point of view, that seems enough, but I'm not sure how councillors feel.
I do remember that there is also a monthly bank reconciliation signed by a councillor, which is it's me on the 2 out of the 3, because we're required by our insurance to do it every month. So I do 2 out of the 3. I'm specifically not allowed to do the quarterly one, so another councillor does them. And that means that the bank is reconciled against the cash flow. Now, I think it's also worth saying in this respect that Yvonne, as you know, has moved over to the Scribe computerised accounting. You got some output from that today, a couple of the sheets that she sent you off of Scribe rather than off of Yvonne's spreadsheet. And when you went and looked at those in Scribe, you're actually getting the one from the Scribe computer, which is online. It's not Yvonne's computer. So as I explained to her yesterday, that's quite an interesting point, because it means that where the well-known fraud was going on in another local council recently, they were being, if they were presented with any documents at all, they weren't the true ones. In this case, I'm not saying that necessarily what is inscribed is true, that's another matter, but at least you're getting the authentic version of the accounts. You're not getting the second set of books instead of the first set of books, getting the only set of books. And I think that's quite useful. So yes, I think with the bank recs, with the fact that we now have, and when we are, this is another thing, once the bank account has come through with Unity Trust Bank, which has been applied for, and Yvonne is waiting for their response, which could be tomorrow or Monday maybe. Maybe with questions, maybe with an approval. They say usually within 3 days or something. When we get to that point and we are authorising payments online rather than signing cheques, that will give us another bit of financial control, because I think we will see the account. And if there is, it depends what's in people's minds. It's very hard to keep track, but if you see an amount going out for £300 that looks a bit odd, and you say, don't remember that one, you can raise it. So I would have thought, if anyone has any points, please raise them, but I would have thought, I now am told only today, Colin, very belatedly, that you have special knowledge of accounting.
To some degree.
To some degree. Well, I'd say mine's some degree, it's not a very big degree.
I have had no difficulty with Yvonne doing the other bookkeeping.
No, indeed. I mean, the system that we're thinking of anyway, it's not really Yvonne. Yvonne is highly useful, but it's the effectiveness of the system of financial internal control. Because to be fair, everyone who's ever been defrauded didn't expect it.
Yeah. But I feel quite happy about the process at the moment.
Good. Is everyone else happy with that?
Yeah.
Okay, can I have a proposal and a second for that?
I'll propose it quite happily.
Colin, thank you.
I'll second it.
Oh, Leslie, thank you very much. Everybody happy? I am happy.
Yes.
Everyone is satisfied with that. So that's F7. So when we go on to finance now, to read the end of year budget statement. Now the budget statement I think, Yvonne, is this one, yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's the one you've got. A few interesting things there. It's very good. This has come straight off the Scribe computer, which saves, not only have we never had it done in quite this way before by Yvonne, but it saves Yvonne quite a lot of work adding up various entries and trying to get it all to, the cross additions and all the rest of it. And it all just happens, as they say, at the press of a button, which is nice. Running through these things, particularly the variances, and just picking out ones that I thought were interesting when I was looking at it this afternoon. Firstly, the variance of burials. These are just points to have in mind if you don't remember them. They've been mentioned before, probably. The burials, the whole 100% of it shows as a variance because we never budget for burials. That's regarded as a bad idea. So, because we never know what they're going to be. So, that always comes in as a 100% variance. The caretaker scheme, the 1355 that was, the caretaker scheme of 900 variance, that is because we do not budget for Warehorn and Carnarvon's informative contribution, but they did. So that's that 900. The 355 of income that shows on its own is because Voices gave us back the money they never spent. It took them about 2 years to do, but they did eventually. And Yvonne also got a small amount as the wayleave payment for the power lines that go across the Royal Garden. And the section 137 we'll talk about later, but you'll see that there is a zero in there for last year, so it's a complete, there's there's £61.19.
61.
But a huge budget, we'll come to that later. And the other thing is a variance of the clerk's salary of minus 53. In other words, the clerk's salary was an overspend of 53. If you turn your minds back, you will recall, I think, that what happened was that the national body came in with a pay rise for our clerk, which is a scale thing, which was slightly bigger than had been budgeted. So Yvonne benefited from the excellent addition of just over £4 a month. Last year minus tax. Yes,
and just one other thing, the voluntary support warden, that payment, the budget is right, but the payment actually was for the previous year's invoice.
Yes, right.
So, I mean, obviously we've got the variant is because we budgeted more, but we haven't actually had an invoice for last year. So that's just a point to make, because I don't think Lee actually did much last year.
The budget was for last year, and the 585 was the year before.
Well, whatever, but it's not current. The budget's for last financial year. The invoice was for the payment was for the previous one. That's all I'm saying, really.
Okay. In a way, so long as we pay what is reasonable, and of course we don't have accruals on our account, so receipts and payments, then if things swing between years, it only becomes an issue, really, in terms of our understanding, if people can always ask questions. It only becomes an issue if we have cash flow problems and we don't. So, I understand. Thank you very much, Yvonne. So I think that one is done, if everyone is happy with that.
Yes.
Now, the next one is the receipts and payments. That's this one here, the long list. Okay. Now, the first thing to say is that we used to always keep distinct, or more distinct, the parish council excluding the caretaker scheme and the caretaker scheme. And to some degree, Yvonne is still doing that on spreadsheets. But as far as the accounting package is concerned, Scribe, which is what this has come straight out of Scribe. And it has them all together because they're all part of our accounts. Okay? And I think I'm right in saying, yes, I'm sure I'm right, it doesn't actually do all of one and then all of the others. So I'm afraid in this particular presentation, they do come a bit here and there. You have to just assess what they are. So, for instance, fuels the van is obviously caretaker because Yvonne isn't actually driving around in it. Right. Yvonne has kindly changed a couple of spelling mistakes, so don't worry about them. And she's also clarified the difference between two clerk salary entries. The one that's for the PC, the parish council clerk, and the one that's the extra hours that we ascribe to the caretaker scheme, whether it's accounted for properly because she does extra hours supervising Alf and doing the accounts for the caretaker scheme. Okay? Other than that, things to spot if you are interested. The equipment replacement reserve of 301, you will see square was a new blower that they bought for a caretaker. The Satswan, I feel £300 was actually 2 years' worth because one of them came in late last year, so we did 2 in 1 year. A bit like I was saying before in a different context. And the damage claim of 35764, I know what it is, but we want to explain because she got the initial explanation.
Yes, a car up in Forgemeads, a vehicle had its window broken, and Alf was in the vicinity at the time with the strimmer. So we're not sure, but it's highly likely that the strimmer did the damage.
Flicked a stone. Entirely possible, and better to just put these things down to experience than to have endless arguments over them. So I thought Yvonne did the right thing by just paying it. I think she took my thoughts and I said I had no problems because it was a delegated matter.
And also Alf was round there strimming yesterday and he said he was very, very careful.
Yet another go, yeah. Right, okay. So are we happy with the receipts and payments account?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. Can I have a proposal, please? Paul? A second? Sue?
Yes.
Paul and Sue. Okay, and everybody happy? I'm happy?
Yes.
Everybody happy?
Yes.
Good, thank you. We now move on to the reserve allocations. That's this one.
Yep.
It says reserves about 6 lines down. Okay, this is where Yvonne analyses the cash balance, really. And as you can see coming down, I mean, it all makes sense, really. She starts off with the bank balance as of the close of the year that we've just had. So this is now a snapshot rather than a year. It's not the balance sheet, but it's more like the balance sheet at the end of the year, but just for cash. So she's got the bank balance at the end of the year. She reduces it by the amount that is actually held in the caretaker account, which has stacked up a bit of money, which is good, because it means that we can, hang on my list, we've got a bit of freedom there, which we will need to use soon. She takes off the amount held in the burial account. That's to say anything for, where people have paid their interment fees and what have you. That builds up. And you'll see where that gets used later. And then there's held in reserves as under 33,339, which is the list that we then follow with specific allocated reserves. So then those reserves go down with things that we put in. Some of them just stand still because we put money in and, didn't spend it all or is waiting for the job to be done. Some we put in a bit each year, like churchyard maintenance. So there's a list of amounts of money. That cash sits in our bank account waiting for us to spend. We could always move it to something else, but in principle we have an outline idea that that's what it will be used for. We also put some money in last year in the budget for capital projects, which of course then didn't go anywhere because we've just spent a year in hibernation. But we have those projects still to get back to, so there we are. So there's a large slice of money which is allocated to particular reserves. Then we've got the burial account. It's the same amount that was listed earlier. Now, we've got to think about the cemetery extension, which is really rather pressing now that we're going to start opening up again. There's a few items that we put a wet finger budget in terms of, what money would we need when we were talking about it a while back. They still sit there, and it's been estimated at 27,050. I mean, that could be wildly wrong in either direction, but 27,050. The burial account, 100,000, will be devoted to that purpose. So that will clear the burial account, and we then need to pay out more to do the cemetery than just what we've got in the burial account. So we knock all that off. The only thing is that we knock off back again burial plots paid in advance. In other words, what's in the burial account, some of it has been paid for people who are not actually buried yet. They paid in advance. And it would be wrong to be taking that money before they've been buried. It's a bit like Amazon doesn't take the money off your credit card until they dispatch the parcel. Some people do, but they're not supposed to. Amazon does not. So you've got to take that back off the burial account, which means it's only really about 11,000 instead of 17. And once that's all done, you come out with an amount that has balanced all those figures off. You take that off the figure at the top down the right-hand column, and we've got that amount of money in the bottom right-hand corner available in cash in the bank, which is not allocated to all those other things. That is kind of, I won't say it's just free spending, because any sensible organisation always has some months of expenditure in the bank in case something happens to their income. And in our case, think of what our income is, including the caretaker scheme, because they don't always get paid on time. That is actually, quite a reasonable sum. So we've got money to actually get on and do things in the coming year or 2 years, and we need to get on and do them. But we have got the money. What we're not in a position, which we used to be when Paul and I joined, was that we had to worry about whether we got any money before the end of the year. Okay?
Fine.
Is everyone happy with that?
Yep.
Is anyone or who will propose that? Colin will propose.
Yes.
And second, Alan, I think, is that your hand? Yes, Alan will second it. Everybody happy with the results?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. All good. Thank you very much. And now we come to the specific account for the caretaker scheme. Now, there's a little tweak here to take into account. Because everything's gone onto the computer, Yvonne and I took the view, there was discussion about whether, let me go back slightly. The financial year for the council ends on the 31st of March. But for reasons lost in the mists of time 8 or 9 years ago when the caretaker scheme started, it was running a month late, because it was due to start on the 1st of April, and Kent and Ashford never got their act together in time. So we started a month late, and it's been a month late ever since. And Yvonne has always run 2 different year ends, which isn't very helpful. So the question was, how could we put them together on the accounts without making the thing needlessly complicated? And the answer we took was, the decision we took was to say, to hell with it, it really doesn't make much difference. We will end with the caretaker account last year after 11 months instead of 12. If it ever comes to producing a set of accounts for, let's say, Ashford or Kent, we put money in, it can always be done on a spreadsheet and tweak back again if we really want it. But actually, they pay us for the year. The only major differences are 1 month's caretaker salary and 1 month of Yvonne's caretaker salary. Everything else is, there's not a lot of cost happens. And of course, there's no accruals in our accounting system. It's just whenever the cash happens. I mean, we've had Kent pay us in the wrong year. That's £8,000 in the wrong year. This is a relatively small amount by comparison. So that's where we are, and it means that this sheet that you've got in front of you all makes sense. The top part, the receipts, is all tickety-boo, straightforward. It's a year. It just happens to be a different year, but by 1 month, but it comes to the same thing. When you get to the payments, the key things really are that the caretaker's salary, which has a positive variance, if he wants to add it up, because he's only had 11 months pay in that year, whereas we budgeted for a full year. The clerk's salary is also only 11 months, and the caretaker's pension is only 11 months. When you get things like the road tax is a year. You know, you don't do sort of so many months one year and so many months the other like a company does. It just goes in when it's paid. And that basically goes down most of the rest. You could say the fuel would be a tiny bit out if you filled up in Johnson's in a different month, but none of those are very material. So broadly speaking, you've got an 11-month account here. In every other respect, it's a standard caretaker's account. And of course, having done this, then next year we'll be back to a normal 12 months. We've just reset it. A bit like if a company changes its year end, which they are allowed to do. Okay, and if we didn't have a budget for it, it would make no difference at all. Down the bottom then, once you've gone off the main thing, there's the blower that we've already seen at £301, which was in the other receipts and payments account. And then there's the equipment replacement reserve. We build that up each year, so that we can put a bit in, and then if we need equipment, we've got a reserve for it. Yvonne has taken out the backpack blower and then added the new unspent reserve. You could actually do it the other way around. This is the new version she sent out after she realised that she'd taken it out twice. You know, you could have the 1856 added the 2000 and then take the backpack blower out. You could do it however you like. It comes to the same thing. So the balance carried forward. So we've got a comfortable equipment replacement reserve, assuming the mower's going okay, because that costs you either more than that. And the van replacement reserve, that is also quite reasonable. We put 1,000 in each year. The van is a few years old now. You know, it must be about 6, 7, 8 years old, the van.
Can't remember the registration number.
Something of that sort, probably, because I think it was 3 or 4 years old when we bought it, wasn't it? And we've had it 3 or 4 years. So, you know, it'll do okay, but it'll need a replacement at some point. And we have made sure that we've paid up for it. Because when we started the caretaker scheme, when the first mower conked out fairly quickly, it wasn't really up to it, and we had to buy another one, then the caretaker scheme couldn't afford the mower, and we just shouldn't have to put some cash in the caretaker scheme, which led to one of our residents making a bit of a fuss over it, which had to be explained, which could be explained, because it wasn't. Okay. Is everyone happy with the caretaker scheme and my explanation?
Yes.
Can somebody propose that, please? Paul, seconded. Colin? Everyone happy?
Yes.
Everyone happy with that?
Yes.
Okay, that's done. And then the last one that's not mentioned on the agenda, but we do it every month, is the monthly transaction statement. Now, what is different here is that it has everything merged together. I think, yes.
So it isn't any different from usual, it's just I haven't produced a caretaker one as well.
I understand. It's the one we have one on the front and one on the back.
Yeah.
The only things I noticed there, the Invicta Law bill, if you remember what Invicta Law had down as their charge for the work they've been doing on registering our land, it was a different figure to this, because this includes the VAT, whereas the other one was only the charge that goes to the council, because everyone gets the VAT back. And otherwise, I think everything is straightforward there, and you know the balance is the same balance. So, can I ask, is everyone happy with that?
Yes.
Can someone propose it? Acceptance, yes, Sue does, and second is Alan. Good. Okay. Right, that is the whole of item 8. Now we get on to the even more exciting item 9, which is the annual government's review statement, which Yvonne sent out. Now, this is a whole set of things we have to do in the right order, in the right way, and everything. I think Yvonne will take us through it. The key here, first of all, though, is that we go through the statement answering yes or no to each item, and if we say yes, which is what we have to say, yes.
No, we have no.
I mean,
We
we're
say
saying
it if that is the way everybody feels.
Oh no, I'm not suggesting otherwise. What I was about to say is we shouldn't say no without recognising that there's a problem. But if we say yes, what I was about to say is it then tells us yes means that this authority is something. So it doesn't merely say, oh yeah. It tells you what yes means, which is important.
Yes.
That's the same thing as Yvonne said, but a different way, which is what I was going to do. So off you go, Yvonne. I think you need to read all these out, don't you?
Well, the first one, of course, is to consider the findings of the review. So I just need you to say, are you happy with, the findings? We were happy with what has happened. So you're obviously, I presume, happy with the findings.
Yes is the answer.
I will just add to that then, if this is a way of doing it. If we say yes, it means that we've prepared the accounting statements, or Yvonne has, in accordance with the...
No, Jeremy, I'm doing A first.
A.
Which is consider the findings that we did earlier in the meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
We haven't.
Yeah. That's why I said it was yes. The answer was yes. It was confirming what we'd already agreed.
Right, now we're on to the governance.
Where's the A then?
On your agenda,
The agenda.
9 annual return,
We're not on the form yet.
A.
Right. Okay.
Injections are needed.
Fair enough. Okay. So consider the findings of the review. Well, we're doing the same thing as we've already done then. Okay.
Oh no,
Yes.
you've got to consider what we found. We had to review it
We
before.
found them to work. So the answer is yes.
Okay. All right. Is there someone going to propose that?
Yes.
Yes.
Tim and Paul. Okay. Is everybody happy? Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so done 9A, fair enough, I understand. Now we resolve to approve the annual governance.
Right.
Fair enough. So off you go. This is where I was getting to in the...
Yes, so do you want to, you carry on, Jeremy, and then I can tick yes or no.
Tick.
Okay, number one, we have put in place arrangements for effective financial management during the year and for the preparation of accounting state. Can you hear me if I put my head down like that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, Jeremy. Sorry to interrupt, Jeremy. I'm just thinking of timing here. Given the fact that we were all sent this beforehand, may I suggest we do this on an exception basis? I've read it through, and I'm saying yes to everything, right? That we've done it, and rather than go through line by line, as we've all seen it.
I think Yvonne will tell us, but I think we are actually expected to go through it line by line, and she ticks each one. There is a whole programme that she knows better than I do about how all this has to be done.
Well, you will have had to have considered it all. And as this has, it says on the agenda that it's been sent out to everybody beforehand. This will go on the notice boards and on the website as well, so everybody can see what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
So one thing I will just mention, the light's going a bit here, number 7, which is we took appropriate action on all matters raised in reports from internal and external auditors. The report from the internal auditor was that he said, this is David Chesson obviously, last May, I've now looked at your records and I'm happy as ever that you have conducted parish council matters with all due diligence. So those were his comments. And the only other thing on the external auditor's report last year, I had been putting in my totals the cancelled cheques and when we had contra amounts. But of course, thinking about it, it's obvious I shouldn't have done because that's not actually income.
No.
So I've had to correct the figures on the annual return from last year's, the ones I carried forward into this year's figures on the other accounting statement. So I have done that.
So that is now up to date.
Yes. Now I've got the correct figures. So that is, so when you come to that one, I've explained what I have done. So if you're happy that you're on, now that you know number 7.
So leave on for a moment, leave out the contra checks issue. Are you saying, Yvonne, because I know you've led us through this process in each year I've been around, you're saying we don't necessarily have to go through and actually settle each one of these individually?
No, because I've circulated it to everybody beforehand.
Yes.
Right, okay. So
that's the answer.
So having been told what we have on item 7, has anyone got any concerns that any of numbers 1 to 8 are not in the yes column?
No.
I am happy with 1 to 8.
Okay. Would someone like to propose that 1 to 8 are all yeses?
Yes.
Yes.
Colin says yes, and Sue seconds.
Yes.
I think. Everybody happy with that then? Yes.
Yes.
So 1 to 8 are all yeses. Number 9, that's slightly more difficult. Is that a yes or an NA?
That's an NA.
Yeah.
Okay, that will be, so it was approved at a meeting of the authority on, Yvonne will fill in the date, and she'll put in a minute reference, and then she has to sign it, and I have to sign it, then we get to go.
Yes.
Right.
And then she has to put on the publicly available website. Yes. All right. Now, the accounting statements previously signed by clerk and forwarded to councillors. That's what we've just done already. Isn't it in item 8? Or is it, oh no, section 2 of this is for accounting statements as well. So that isn't good. Okay, here is a little tiny confusion which Yvonne will explain all about the figure on the 31st of March 2021 at the top, I think.
Only that I think I did explain when I sent it round that the figure on here is as it was at the end of last year, everything agreed, and that's the right figure. However, when I came to start scribe, I had the outstanding checks from the year before, obviously aren't on the scribe. So as they came through the bank account, it automatically cleared it. But because Green Leaf Tree Cares didn't come through at any time, I was forever having £504 difference. So the only way that I could make the bank account clear at the end was to increase my bank account carried forward figure into scribe.
Yeah.
So it had the £504. It was the only way I could do it. So on your receipts and payments thing, you will find that the bank, it's the 83 whatever, which is the £504 difference between that.
Yeah.
So if you're all happy, it was the only way I could do it. I tried, I contacted them and they said that was the way.
Now, when this gets submitted with 82671 in there, does that then have to be explained to them because it cross-references in their figures with something else?
What figures in some?
Anything else that it cross-references with?
What figures?
Well, I don't know. I know they don't get very much. But
This is all they get.
This is all they get. Okay, so as far as they're concerned, 82671
Yes.
is 80.
Yes.
That's right.
Okay, fair enough. Right, so all those figures, I saw how all the others came up. I knew that was 504 out, and I reconciled that against the scribe myself with the 504. The fixed assets is a different issue. That comes out of thin air from
Spreadsheet that I carry up, yeah.
Okay, so you just put them in. Okay, and we don't have any trust transactions. So is everyone happy with what that is?
Yes.
I went through ticking all the figures apart from the assets and allowing the 504 against the statements we've already agreed. And adding various things up and subtracting them and all the rest of it. Yvonne explained to me that the figures in there, apart from the assets, they all come off of Scribe, don't they? But you still have to enter them on the form.
Yes, if I show you what I...
The In other words, Yvonne used to do it all with a calculator, adding up different bits of her accounts. Now, what's in Scribe, it knows what goes in which box, so it does it automatically. There we are, brilliant.
You see, this is all the figures, but it's doesn't come out on the form that we have. So I can't just use this.
Yes.
But those are the figures.
You can see the top one has to be changed by the 504.
Okay.
Understood.
Mhm.
Is everyone happy? That's very helpful.
Yes.
Is everyone,
Yes, yeah.
Who will propose that one?
I'll propose it.
Jennifer, Leslie. Seconded. Alan. Okay, is everybody happy with that?
Yes, it's far clearer.
Are you happy, Paul? Yeah.
There he is.
Right, okay, good. So that also has to be approved here.
You've seen I've already signed it, which is what I have to do.
Absolutely, yeah, and I've got to sign it later. Okay, working papers long, I have with Paul's idea that it might take one. I have one. So we've got down to the end of 9 then. Good. Now, payments for authorisation. Do you want to go through them, Yvonne?
Right, yes, they're all fairly straightforward.
Forward.
ICCM is the usual £95.
Cemetery and crematorium management.
Weald of Kent is the usual annual membership of £25. ACRK is the usual membership, £55. And Calc, once again, usual, £546.86 total. BHIB, I'm pretty sure I forwarded it to Jeremy, but I don't think I forwarded it to everybody, which I was going to do. So it's not due until the 1st of June. So if you would like to defer it to the next meeting so that everybody sees it first, that's what I suggest we do.
I think the key really, I mean, other people tell me what they think. I don't think it has a problem with paying it if you wish to. What I was anxious to do was that members should all see the renewal documentation, because insurance is important and it can bite us, and everyone has their own levels of experience with different things. It does, I would say, it is more explanatory and in more detail than we used to get from payment company. Some of it was, where they cut and pasted different things and it just looked more contradictory. This is at least a coherent count, but I think it does pay for us all to look at before the policy starts. Whether we actually approve it now or not, I don't mind either way. But I'm quite happy if we just delay it to another meeting.
I think it will be better to defer it till the 1st of June so we can see the documentation.
Right. And we'll do it in a meeting then.
And the way it works,
Apart from that, I would recommend that we accept all the other.
I haven't finished.
Oh, sorry. I know you've got another one down here.
We're just on the insurance. The way it works now is that I have to log into their sort of system, and there's all the documents and there's all the previous years. So it's a different way of doing it. I don't get it as an attachment as such. So it's a different way, but it seems to work quite well. Yes, the last one, I do hope, this is from Peter Burnett, who's the treasurer of the Outlook on Oxney magazine. I do hope that the Outlook on Oxney continues to be of value to the community, particularly during the lockdown period. If the Wittersham PC could consider making another generous donation towards the running costs in order to keep the magazine going, that would be very much appreciated. Please let me know if you need any further information. Many thanks.
Right, now, I've spoken to Yvonne about it, I looked at it, we didn't pay anything for Outlook last year during our year of hibernation, and Outlook, of course, put a magazine out, for the second half of the year, basically, after we've finished doing the small ones, a bit more than half a year. Now, last year the accounts are closed, as far as our receipts and payments are concerned, but we didn't pay anything. That's why we had that to whatever it was, 2,000 positive variants, or 1,900 odd. I've spoken to Chris Lee today, who's the chairman of Outlook now, and what I'd like to suggest to councillors to consider is that we pay our usual amount now, having been asked, but we treat this as a payment for last year, which is entirely up to us to do. So they will have had, we normally pay two amounts a year, the same amounts. We will pay them one for last year instead of the usual two, because they haven't had any yet. And then we will pay the two more this year, so that we'll pay, instead of two each year, we'll pay none last year and three this year. We'll be one better off, and they will have one more than they would have done if we didn't pay any.
Amounting to how much?
They're about 930 each, I think, aren't they, Yvonne?
What we paid before is £927.50.
As a wet finger, 97.50. So, basically, Outlook has been running down their reserves, while we haven't been paying, and I don't think that's a sensible position for them to be in. But on the other hand, they didn't do the usual 10 magazines last year; they only did half a dozen, so or thereabouts. So, I felt that to not give them any for last year because they didn't get their act together and asked us for it. To not give them any last year is mean. To give them two last year out of this year is kind of super generous. But I thought that one out of two was fair.
I'd like to suggest your suggestion, Mr. Chairman, is an admirable one. I fully support it, notwithstanding our candidate who might be joining the parish council as the editor. I think you made an excellent suggestion, and I put it that we should adopt it.
Okay.
I would second that, but is that going to be one payment of three?
It'll be one now, and then we will do the other two in later months.
So we're guaranteeing the money?
Well, we're not
rather than put it down now.
No, we're not guaranteeing it, but what we're doing is we're paying one now on the resolution, which will actually, in our minds, not in the accounts, because it's going to be paid in April or May, but in our minds it will be last year's pay late, just the same as Kent once paid our caretaker in the following year. And then later this year, maybe they thought around sort of September and March, they would ask us for donations. Because the year before last, we paid them in March, so, and then there was a whole, we should have, if we paid this one in March, for instance, if that's when they'd asked us for it, it would have been fine. The only complication is that we're doing it now in April. And what I'm saying is, if councillors agree, it will be useful then as the agreement for future. We'll treat this one as last year's, and then when they ask us for new donations, we obviously have to consider them as they come. We're not committing to them, but when they ask us for future donations, if all is going well, we'll pay them two more this year. And so we'll save one donation, they've got one donation.
Okay, I would second the situation what Paul recommended and progress with it as soon as possible.
Just like to clarify with section 137, it's something that we have to consider on each individual item. It's not something that we can say, we'll give you this and then we'll give you that and that and that. It's has to be considered. We have to still consider it each time as to whether it's something we want to do.
Yes, I'm not suggesting we commit.
No, I just wanted to clarify.
And we have a government fixed budget limit on 137, but we're well within it,
yes.
Even if we put three in the year. Yeah. Had we, of course, been up against the limit, that would have stopped us doing what I suggested, but we're not there.
So we're going with the same amount, 927.50.
So I think so, well established.
But are they happy with that amount when your discussions?
She was delighted that I should give her one for last year, as it were.
I understand that. I just quote that what Yvonne said there. Are you happy just with the same amount? No increase?
Well, I think the benefit is that, and I did explain it to Chris, that we prefer it to be below 1,000 because of the fact that it makes it easier than, saying, well, I did explain to her, that we limit repayments because otherwise we'd start asking for evidence of what was being used, When Ashford gives out donations, and I now sit on the Ashford Donations Committee, because of CAL, then they expect a full account of where they're getting the money from, and where they've got to bring with it. We never have had that from Outlook because they wish to retain independence. So that's a reason for keeping it down where it is.
It just seems a funny amount. I would have thought 950 would have been a.
I don't mind 950 per. Is everyone happy with 950? Any advances on 950? Right, we're on for 950 then. Should be doubly happy. Right, okay. The treasurer is actually Peter Burnett, but I rang this because I knew she was chairman and I had her phone number. Right, good. So the date of the next parish council meeting is the 6th of May. And that will be the annual meeting of the parish council, which I'm afraid is the other boring one a year because we have to go through all the elections.
What time will that start?
Well, I think we said 6 o'clock, didn't we? Yeah, 6 o'clock.
And that's a week today?
A week today.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the annual parish meeting, we will hold following the meeting, and that will hopefully be a non-event because I'm hoping no one will come. We're not going to do any presentations. There is obviously no wine and peanuts unless they provide them. We will expect to do a proper meeting when we can hold it in the hall. The reason for this charade is because we're obliged to have an annual parish meeting before the 1st of June, and the village hall will not be properly open until near the end of June.
No.
The government didn't work that one out. Okay?
Yeah.
So now the items for information. Would you like to start off, Yvonne? I've got a few.
Okay.
The one on pennies.
Yeah. Well, I've got 3, if I may. So, this is following on from one of the items for information at the last meeting, when I mentioned Hilary Pettifer and her working party were working on the memorial garden and wanted some money for roses, if you remember, which I said was okay on behalf of the council. They have purchased 9 rose bushes at a cost of £101, which includes manure. I met them up there and they asked at the time if Alf could take away the brambles and the prunings. And I said yes, as long as there wasn't soil attached, because he burns it down at the cemetery, which he did. But unfortunately, where they were digging out areas that were fairly grassy, and they took the soil with it, and they've gone round all the edging. I mean, it's beautiful up there, thanks to them. They've done a really great job. But having taken round the edging of the path, they have now put all that in the corner of the memorial garden, which we didn't have a compost heap there before, and it's also now leaning up against the fence, which isn't our fence. So it's a bit of a problem. However, I would like to give thanks to them. They've done a good job, and it does look good up there.
It does.
So, but we do have a slight problem.
What's the solution?
It sounds, from having discussed it with Yvonne the other day, it sounds as though I'm going to need to weigh in, and of course we can't actually meet at the minute easily, weigh in with a mixture of Hilary as organiser of the excellent volunteers and Alf as the caretaker to get them to settle a dispute as to exactly who was doing what.
The trouble was that they didn't ask me what they should do with it. Because Alf said if only they'd said, he said I could have brought the trailer round, I could have given them bags. But that didn't happen. Sort of a breakdown of communication, I suppose. But it was just done without checking what they should do with it.
Somehow or other, I've got to resolve that one.
Why don't you give them the bags, Jeremy, and say if they bag
Get on with it.
Alf will remove it.
That might be an answer. Okay, so that's that one, Yvonne.
Right, and the next one, I had a phone call first and now followed up with an email. This is from Frankie Osborne, no relation. Thank you for my call just now. Frankie and Finn's is a local family-run mobile wood-fired pizza company. We serve delicious sourdough pizzas cooked in our pizza oven horse box. At the moment, we visit the surrounding villages of Charing, Ham Street and Woodchurch, Betherston and Stone on a regular basis, and would like to propose the idea of adding Wittersham to our route. Wittersham is a growing village and maybe the locals would appreciate a bit of variety. We would like to visit on Sundays, 1 to 2 times per month. We thought that the village hall would be a great spot. Please advise of next steps.
Right.
Lovely.
It sounds as though they must be Findus pizzas if they're done in a horse box.
I'm not convinced of the quality. I think the councillors should request.
You like a piece of pizza?
Tasty.
Yeah.
Right, well, I think that Yvonne and I discussed this before. It's a matter that obviously to use the village hall is really for the village hall first and foremost, but there seems to be no reason from our point of view not to encourage it if they can make their business work.
I agree.
Sports club, if they'd like the place, if they could park up on a Sunday,
That in some ways might be better. Yeah,
That would be better. Mm.
They went in somewhere in the sort of car park area, a little bit of grass park, yeah. So they've got to ask the sports club.
That's a better solution.
Yeah. Is everyone happy if Yvonne goes back and suggests that and gives them a contact for the sports club?
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. Sunday night supper resolved.
Good. Yeah.
Pint of beer and a pizza.
Yeah.
Yeah.
the game of cricket.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And the cricket season's coming up, Paul.
As long as the cricketers, the Wittersham cricket team, are not partaking of the pizza, although we don't mind if the visiting teams do.
It may produce a more positive result, Alan. Mind it.
Oh.
Right, so you've got the third one.
Yes, the third one is from a resident up in Jubilee Field who's had problems with the neighbours' bikes, off-road type bikes that they've been racing up on the field, on Piper's Field roundabout, causing lots of noise and that sort of thing. So she came to me back in March last year saying she wanted to bring it to the attention of the parish council. Well, I said at the time that we weren't meeting on a regular basis. However, I could perhaps do something in between times. So I contacted our PCSO and she came back to me and she said that she will visit the area regularly, but she hasn't seen anything. And I also contacted the housing officer because it's a housing, ABC's housing officer. It's a council tenant. And eventually she came back and she said she would talk to the tenant and liaise with the PCSO. So after that, and I informed this resident as well, after that I didn't feel there was a lot more that the parish council could actually do as a body. So I didn't take it any further. I just left it with the authorities, so to speak. But more recently now, the chairman has had a telephone conversation with this same person. So if you want to take it from here.
Okay.
Sorry, this is the one that's been publicised on Nextdoor, and my understanding is Tim Piper's given his permission.
Yeah.
No, it's not. This is part of the confusion.
It's not the one about the motor to the 8-year-old kid.
Obviously, it's not the same one. And
Okay.
I had that clarified. That's why she rang me. There was the thing on Nextdoor about complaining of the other children doing it. Then, if you saw the rest of the thread, mother of the children said it was, and that they are competing in trail biking. They're electric bikes, and the father was a supervisor, or the granddad, or the uncle, or something.
Yep.
Does that stuff, and that Tim Piper gave them permission. The lady who first complained about it then went back and said, "Okay, I've had a discussion with that lady. Very helpful, good to talk. sort of a bit of 2 and 2 makes 5, because she saw the people doing it and thought it was the ones, I think, that have been making a nuisance themselves. These are electric bikes, so they're basically fully quiet. The trouble that we have had last year, the year before maybe, but certainly last year, and as Yvonne is talking about, and we know the resident concerned who has been raising the problem. I don't mean unreasonably.
And it's not the same person as the one on reporting it on next door.
No, absolutely not.
Just so that clarify.
Thank you. The person who has been on to Yvonne last year, onto me last year, onto me on the phone yesterday, is a different person, and her concerns are not the one that's just been on next door. She knows about that, that's fine. It is about the ones who ride trail bikes with engines and not much exhaust, if any, and they ride them, she says, I've not seen them, up and down across Piper's Field, making a huge amount of noise whenever they're there at the weekend when the weather's good, winter or summer or whatever, weekends. Now, I passed that on to Tim Piper last year, because I said, well, it's your field, and, you ought to know, and anything you can do to stop it. And he said, well, if I see them, because I'm not there, which is a good point. Yvonne passed it on to the PCSO. I passed it on to the KCC community warden, and because Joe, the community warden, was on maternity leave, I got the supervising, supervising community warden, who covers Folkestone and Ashford or something, and he got involved at least a bit. I don't know how much. He certainly spoke to the complainant. I'm not sure if he ever went to the house, and Yvonne put it to the housing officer as well. Yesterday, she was ringing to say, just to make sure that it's not the same people, so that's fine. It's the ones I've always complained about, and we know where those people live, in one of the new houses. She has had direct discussions with Kate Richards, the PCSO. She's grateful for what Yvonne has done with the housing officer and all the rest of it, but it's still potentially a problem. She keeps a diary. She gets onto Cape Kent Police on the chat function on the website. I have suggested to her, I said, there's not a huge amount to do. I said, if you came when we have our proper equivalent of a parish annual parish meeting, if we managed to get the PCSO there as well, come along and make your point in person. No, I don't want to do that, she said, because, I don't really want to put my head above that parapet. Or words to that effect. I have said to her last year and again yesterday, it's very difficult to solve these things. What about, is there a possibility of the estate, I think this would be quite a good idea, starting to get together with a residents' association. They have that sort of thing has worked in much worse areas than this, just in terms of generating a certain amount of self-policing with a small p, and peer pressure. And those are the people who understand what is going on, who's doing it, when it happens, and what they want to do about it. Now, she says she's very happy to join, she can do more than that. But I think probably there is an opportunity for some people in the estate maybe to put themselves forward if it can be encouraged and facilitated from our side. There's nothing we can do directly, it's not our business. But we can facilitate as a community issue. We can even try and seed it a bit. And that's something maybe to talk about when we get to our annual meeting. There are, as I said to the lady concerned, there are terrible estates in places like Tottenham and that, where that solution really has worked. It's taken a lot of money from London boroughs to support them, but they have turned around terrible estates. I'm talking about something quite tiny by comparison, which is just to get a grip of a limited amount of antisocial behaviour. Because I think that people on that estate know exactly who's doing it, when they're doing it, they know the people, they know the mothers, and they have that opportunity in a way that we never will. But that was my main suggestion to them. I don't think there's anything else to say about it at this stage, other than we've discussed it. It's on the tape, and Yvonne keeps on with the PCSO. Oh, the other point that I made to the lady, and it's a general point for us as well. antisocial behaviour was very much on the agenda of the ACC local policing, who I saw at the biannual police commissioner in March. Antisocial behaviour is one of the things that they are trying to crack down on alongside other things, and they are getting more officers. Okay, Alan. Can't hear you. You're on mute.
Alan, you're on mute.
Sorry, Paul. Sorry, Jeremy. I've got another event just now, so I'm going to leave you if that's all right. I'm very sorry.
Okay.
But I think we're nearly finished anyway.
We've done most things, yeah. I'll see you next week.
Thank you. Talk soon.
Okay. Right, bye. Right. As I think I was just saying, sorry, you've got your hand up, and I think maybe Paul did as well. Yvonne.
When you finish that, I've just got one other quick thing I wanted to say.
What were you waving?
No, I was trying to attract your attention because Alan was waving. We could.
I did say he had to go early, which is why we started slightly earlier tonight. Okay.
Good on.
Right, Yvonne, your last one.
Just to let you know, when it was announced the death of the Duke of Edinburgh, I was in the car at the time, so I couldn't do anything about it, about what we needed to do, which, when I got to where I was going, I was able to, I was going to then contact Dave Fletcher, because Dave Fletcher holds the flag. However, the chairman had already started the process off. But in the meantime, Dave Fletcher was up there putting the flag at half-mast before being asked. So I'm very grateful to Dave for acting as he did.
Good for Dave. Yes, I got on to Alf. Alf said he'd go over and do it, but then he needed to contact Dave, and by that time, Yvonne had clarified, and then Dave had done it. Yes, so it all fitted well. We certainly had our flag run halfway up the flagpole pretty quickly.
Yes, I was very grateful.
And it then flew according to the official requirements until the morning after the funeral.
Okay, that's it.
So that's all of those. Now there are some others. Leslie wants to raise one.
Yeah. I had a phone call yesterday from Kathy Bugden, who runs the Rural Kent Coffee Caravan. This is an initiative sponsored by ARC, which I now have some dealings with. And the reason she rang was because I had listened to a talk by her and expressed some interest that at some point Wittersham might be interested in having the caravan come along and visit our village. It is a completely free service. It's a rather attractive vehicle that comes along, sets up once a month, and dispenses coffee, tea and cake, all free, and perhaps more importantly, information to anyone who cares to come along and have a cup of coffee. It's perhaps most targeted towards older people, but not necessarily. They also encourage young mothers or people with disability, or just people who are lonely. Now I know that we have activities going on in the village hall, like the coffee morning and lunch for older people, but this is slightly different. It is outside, and it does encourage people just to come along and have a meet up, talk to each other, and perhaps get information on services that might be useful to them. It's proving very successful. That they are doing it in about 20 different villages at the moment. And a slot came up because unfortunately one of the participants had to pull out for a Monday through the summer, actually starting in June, but as I sadly would be away for that, and I would obviously volunteer to liaise and do the donkey work on this, I suggested maybe it could start in July and would run through to October. I had a chat with Jeremy about it yesterday, and I sent him the email she sent me, which also includes quite an informative piece, a link sent by her with a film on that, which I found very interesting and encouraging. The only problem is that they've got a short time frame on this. She needs to know quite quickly, like in this week, whether or not we would be interested. She doesn't want to. She doesn't want to get into competition with anything we're doing ourselves in the village. But as I say, this is a more. This is a wider scope, and it seems to be working successfully. And it's a nice, pretty cup of coffee. And a chance to meet up. As I said, if you were interested, then there is a link on the email I sent to Jeremy, which you can see all the details on it. And I would be very happy to liaise with her and try and do what's necessary to get it set up. I don't know if it's something that you think is a good idea.
Well, thanks, Leslie. I looked at that. I looked at the film. Nick Burgess, by the way, was very positive about it, and he's a volunteer, and he's on the film. I think the big niche there, it's not a big niche, it's the niche. Niche there because we have the coffee in the hall, we may have coffee in the pub when it opens, when they start doing muggers or whatever. We have the monthly lunch in the hall, which is also Monday as it happens. And so on. The niche really, I think, is information, help, comfort in the most abstract sense. Because there are people there, they come along with, when you go in some places and there's all the leaflets for all the tourist venues around, and there's one for Bodiam Castle, and there's one for the Donkey Sanctuary, and there's one for this one. But they come along with things like that, and they're full of leaflets for things that might be of help to an individual, whether it's the sort of, I don't know, I'm now just making this up, but, let's say there might be one for diabetes, one for Alzheimer's, and one for, the council tax, the council tax support, and there's one for this and one for that. And the people who come are familiar with those kind of things. Now, Yvonne does the parish desk in the coffee morning once a month, but with all, despite Yvonne's best efforts and skill, she is not particularly dovetailed into all of those services, particularly from Kent County Council, that sort of thing. And social services. Yvonne knows her contacts. She will be nice. She will help by trying to find things out for officers. But really, my perception is that Yvonne's coverage is less, and even then, people don't necessarily come, and they have to pay. They don't get cake there, and they have to pay for cover. This is free because it's sponsored, and it is outdoors, which of course can make it a nice event. It will compete a bit with the coffee mornings around the gardens, of course, when they started getting next year. They're not going to happen this year. But, we won't know till we try. Paul?
I'd just like to add, I think it's a great idea. I've experienced it firsthand in Bethersden, and I attended there, sat down with some of the residents there. It's a great campaign to support loneliness and isolation. The leaflets and information that KCC provide and provide staff to explain them range, as you quite rightly said, and I've had first-hand experience of people benefiting from that. I think it would attract a different audience than the open garden scheme fundraising for the church, and I think it's something that would be a real positive for the village green, because it would give an actual presence north of the B road, and in the wide open spaces there. It would attract a different audience, and I don't think competes with anything at the moment. And I think that at the appropriate time, it would be good to kind of, try to connect a little bit of the fact that we welcomed it, the parish council, and make that connectivity. They do a cracking job. They've been expanding. They've got a track record of success, and I think it's an opportunity that doesn't come up very often, and we need to grab it. So, and I'd like to thank Leslie for stepping forward and offering to be the liaison.
Just totally support that comment.
Good. You mentioned the village green, Paul, and I was thinking of the alternative places. I did think of the village green, but I thought it might be a bit exposed there, but it's obviously good because it's right by the council estate, as was. You think that's better than the front of the sports club, which is sensible, but it's the wrong side.
I think the sports club for the pizza van is a great idea, but this is around loneliness and isolation, and we need to go. Look, your phrase about the council estate, put it bluntly, we need to go in there. We need to raise our profile. That's where some of the challenges and problems are that we've heard of tonight.
I agree.
There'll be people who don't come to the village hall. So, it's another threat.
And of course, it does also, I think you put your finger on something important, it does put a presence on that side of the village.
Yes.
Because otherwise, there isn't anything. There's a rock, a boulder, as they call it, on the village green, but out Moses. But otherwise, we're not that side, really.
I think that's a great idea.
I certainly support it.
Good stuff.
They'll want to back you the site anyway. I think... Yvonne, I'm not sure whether putting the coffee caravan on the village green technically matches the village green legislation, but I don't think anyone's going to complain.
Well, there's
a very good assembly point.
There's a parking area right beside the village green. Lay-by.
So basically, the vehicle could sit in the lay-by and the chair, and everything else can go on the grass when they are then recreating. Support it. Everyone happy with that?
Let's proceed.
Excellent.
Right, in that case, I will contact her tomorrow and say we'd like to take it up. I think the next stage is that they send someone along to talk to us and about site, etc. So at that point, if perhaps, Yvonne, if you're interested in joining,
Of course.
that might be.
Okay, can you, Leslie, send your thing with the link around, description and everything, so everyone else can look at the film? I know they're reading it already, but everyone at least can join the programme.
Yeah,
I'll
do that tomorrow morning.
Just one thing, Leslie. Should the lunch club start up again, it was always on the third Monday in the month.
Right.
Whereas I don't know of other things happening, but the third Monday.
This is a. All I know at the moment that this is an opportunity for this summer.
Yeah.
Presumably, once we hopefully get a foothold, we can continue. But maybe not necessarily on a Monday, but that we can talk about. But this is.
But that was just.
Yeah, that's the 4 days this summer, and as Jeremy was talking to him yesterday said, a lot of the regular activities in the village probably won't get going again this summer, or not straight away. So it might fill a hole.
There isn't a clash this year because the coffee caravan is on a 4-weekly cycle. So although it moves through the month, it only comes onto the third Monday of any month occasionally. It doesn't happen this year.
No problem.
But I think it doesn't happen this year, maybe because you're not doing it in June. That may be what it was. But anyhow, it was not a problem.
Right.
Okay, so we're all happy with that. Is that all of yours? Yes, Yvonne's done and Leslie's done. One, I've written down caretaker, and I'm not sure what I wanted to raise. I think I'll have a word with you once we've finished the meeting on something else. Future meetings, just a thought that's in my mind, which I haven't discussed. Well, I don't think I discussed it either. Maybe I did. It was triggered anything from something else she said. We're going to get back to proper meetings sooner or later, depending on what we do in May, June. It may not be that soon. because the free run at the village hall won't be until the 21st of June. So May and June are ruled out. Even on the 17th of May, the May meeting is held is not out if we do the normal dates. But at the minute, of course, we're just doing it on the basis of whenever we have one. When we do get back to holding proper meetings and not Zoom ones, which will finish by May the 7th because the approval finishes, there is a question in my mind as do we want to go back to holding them at 7 in the evenings? Because I was talking to Leslie about this on the phone yesterday. Maybe there's no reason really why we don't start holding them if councillors are okay at maybe 6 o'clock. Because the only person who is actually working on the council as opposed to doing things is Paul, I think. And Paul, your work is essentially self-generated, isn't it? You have appointments and things. I don't think you travel up to London as often now, do we? Not this year, but the question is whether the reason I'm suggesting 6 o'clock or 6:30 is simply because we were getting into a habit, and I would like to have shorter meetings anyway. We get into a habit of not leaving the village hall until after 10, and that seems to be unnecessarily arduous.
The only problem, I'm mindful of my own time right now. Actually, I have to look after my wife for reasons which I won't go through. But just to add on that, I'm just thinking if I'm working in London, which could happen, I'm going to struggle to get back by 6 o'clock. But that's not. Don't worry about it. I'm just thinking about the public. If we move that to 6 o'clock, people with planning applications or people who want to attend who are working could well struggle to get there for 6 o'clock.
Right.
And whilst I'm certainly not averse to ending earlier in the evening, maybe, and this sounds like a dreadful compromise, but maybe we could sort of trial at least bringing it forward to 7, right? At least, I mean, I know that's not a massive.
6:30.
Yeah, I just don't know. I mean, if I was in London, I'd struggle to get back for 6:30, but that's
Right.
that's me, and I'm
Yes,
not. I'm thinking in wider context. Why don't we try it for a couple of meetings and just do it? I wouldn't put it out for consultation to the residents.
No.
We'll just get on and do it, right? and if no one says anything, we'll just carry on, and I'll just try and do my level best not to be. I've got some commitments coming up in London, but I'll try my level best not to to pick this on the second Tuesday.
I think the point you make about planning applications and applicants is a good one. I mean, the thing is that we don't have many people come to them. I'm a bit loath to be discommoding councillors every month on the basis of an individual who may only come once ever. And not many. The other thing is that
let's
let me just finish, please.
Let's give it a try.
We don't have to take planning applications at the beginning of the meeting. So
No.
if we started at 6 or 6:30, we could be discussing their planning application at 8 o'clock.
Actually, that's a great way to ensure that we get some attendance. We could put all the stuff we wanted to communicate to the village at the beginning of the meeting rather than any other business, because they have to listen to it just to hear the planning application. I think that's a brilliant idea.
I mean, we've always done it the other way around because, again, you see, we come back to the same point. We discommode the councillors who wait there till 10:30. And to be fair, one of the members of the public often stays nearly as late as we do. But everyone else has shot off shortly after the public session, right after the public session. And then we flog through the rest of it. So, okay, we'll have a little discussion, Yvonne and I, and then make a suggestion perhaps on the email as to we're doing these ones at 6 o'clock. They have a certain course more people at home. Even the big one on the two big planning applications. That we did at 6, didn't we?
I would have thought, as far as planning applications are concerned, if it's so important to them, which it usually is, that they would make arrangements to be there.
Good point. And the only thing in the law that I know of is that the annual parish meeting, which of course we're going to hold next week this time, is not allowed to start until 6 p.m. But 6 p.m. is the time in there, not 7 or 8.
Noise is off.
Noise is off, yeah. Okay, so that's quite helpful, thank you. We'll see how that looks, but I think we've had the opportunity of breaking a previous style, and we might use it. Okay. Does anyone else have other things they want to raise before I close the meeting?
No, I think we should let Paul, if possible, get off to look after Julia. Anyway.
Okay, I wanted to raise two things quickly. I don't know if Paul has to go at this minute or whether minutes.
Have we closed the meeting?
Yes, please.
Wait then, please.